Hello, brothers and sisters in Cooperative Baptist Fellowship land and the larger ecumenical community. This is Sterling Severns. I'm pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church here in Richmond, Virginia, and have been pastor here for the better part of almost 17 years. It'll be 17 years this coming spring. The staff at Cooperative Baptist Virginia have asked me to just give you a little boost, a little word of encouragement, and maybe some creative thoughts that can help those that are feeling especially stuck right now, as you are obviously looking straight into the lens, literally the lens of the Advent season, and maybe even just a little bit beyond that. I'm going to do the best I can to be as short as possible, and hope that this just kind of gets some creative juices flowing, or perhaps opens your heart, or you just maybe don't feel a little quite so alone. But obviously, I'm not going to be able to determine what things look like in your context, because only you know what that's like. Some of us are obviously serving in congregations where we are the only staff member that is making this happen. Like, we're literally the only staff member. There are other contexts where we're the only staff member making it happen, even though there are other staff members. And of course, there are other congregations that have a good blend of volunteers and staff and everything in between. So obviously, there's no cookie cutter anything here, no Christmas cookie cutter present with what I'm going to share with you. So what I want to begin with is actually, the timing is great. This morning on my way into the church office, I got a text message from a church member that's trying to offer me some encouragement at a season that I find myself feeling especially tired, like the rest of you. All of us in our own way. And I won't go through all of what she sent me as much as just to key in on one thing, which is that nostalgia and wonder are married together. I don't know about you, but as I think about Advent and think about the Christmas season that follows, and even Epiphany for that matter, I can't help but to feel more nostalgic about this particular season than any other season. It's Thanksgiving week. The moment that I'm recording this, it's Thanksgiving week. There are a lot of us that are not going to be able to be with family and loved ones. And we know that that's true of our parishioners. And there's a deep amount of sadness with that. And with that sadness comes, my guess is, just a doubling down on nostalgia. And if your experience is like the experience that of my own and my congregants alike, when I look back and I think about Advent seasons past, even last year, but certainly 10 years ago, or even on into my childhood, I just can't help but to feel very nostalgic. But also, there is a sense of wonder about this season that is just unique beyond unique. And so here at Tabernacle, one of the things that we have prioritized through the years is, rather than running away from our past, openly embracing the God of wonder that has walked with us from one generation to the next. In other words, we aren't so fearful of talking about the church that once was, thinking that people are going to be longing for the good old days, that we just shouldn't even mention that time period. Rather, we feel strongly that we should be looking at it and doing our best job to be honest in our reframing of our understanding of what's happened before us. So this is where I think some of the churches that practice the church year find themselves in a better posture than those that maybe aren't participating actively in the life of the church year, but that doesn't make it a deal breaker. So let me get specific, because I know that's probably why you're watching mostly today. So what does that mean? It means that ritual has power. Ritual points to wonder. Advent points to nostalgia, and Advent also really points into wonder. And so find a way to make the candles happen. Whether you're a congregation in the past that has year in and year out made a really big deal of the fact that you're lighting the candle each week, and there's a ritual that has gone with that. And it may be like in our past, each year we kind of choose a different rhythm. I don't even know if our congregation is aware of it, but one year it would be, we've taken a group of senior adults in the life of the church and that have been present at the church for decades, and we've matched them with family members that have just arrived, some of them being single. Like, I still remember a very poignant moment over a decade ago where one of our sweet older ladies, and we had a feeling this might be last Christmas, and sure enough, it was. She was escorted down the aisle by a young adult who she had helped raise in Sunday school all those years ago. And it's a vivid memory of him offering his arm, not just as a prop, but as a necessary support to get her down the aisle. And very gently, he helped light the candle with her arms, kind of holding his arms as he actually lit it. There are other years that we have focused in on allowing a Sunday school class or a small group to be the ones that actually go about lighting the candle. And so what I want to encourage you to think about is there a way, for those of you that have had this candle tradition in the past, for you to get people in their pods, like people that are actually comfortable being in the same physical space, to actually light the candle? And remember, there are 3 purple candles and 1 pink candle. And so the way that would work is you would have them light, be it in their pod, in their physical location, light the candle, and in turn, kind of help lead the service by recording something that they send to you, for those of you that are pre-recording your services. Or if it is a live stream service, is there a possibility of those folks actually being involved, physically present in the sanctuary? But with COVID kind of starting to take off again and rage and in pretty strong form, there's a strong possibility that wouldn't be able to happen. I wonder, do you have photographs of years past? Another option would be that you would actually, for those of you that are using Zoom, to actually make this a practice where you're encouraging everyone in the life of the church to actually purchase a small little home version of that Advent wreath and candle. They're very affordable. You can find them certainly on Amazon and another eBay or whatever, or make their own. It doesn't matter if they're not purple and pinks and whatnot. But the idea would be that you would have a designated moment where you are actually lighting the candle because nobody else can safely be in the space. But at the same time, people that are in their homes are lighting theirs in unison. That does create some logistical challenges, for example, dripping wax and whatnot. And so you may need to create some kind of permission-giving thing where you light the candle, but then after the first prayer of the day, you give people the blessing of extinguishing those candles. I think, for example, on Ash Wednesday, we will often remind folks that didn't grow up in traditions that receive the imposition of ashes, it's okay to wash it off. So it may be that you just need to get real practical and encourage people to extinguish. But to circle around where I started, 3 purples and 1 pink, what I would encourage you to do is visually keep it consistent with each week. So if you lit this candle this week, be sure that when the service starts the following week, that candle is already lit before you light the next one, because we're building. Here at Tabernacle, we've had a very strong tradition of making the candle lighting moment a really big deal. And so we will have children singing the same song week in and week out. This year at Tabernacle, we're going to be hearing different iterations of O Come, Emmanuel. And we aren't physically gathering in the sanctuary for our Sunday morning corporate worship time. And so each week in and week out, people at home will have the opportunity to sing, because we'll put the words or the stanzas up there on the screen. But basically, in the past, we've had children sing, and then there's a responsive reading, and then there's the lighting of the candle. And then on the other side, there will be maybe a prayer, or we'll mix it up year to year. But there is a very formal procession and recession, and we're not a very formal church. So what I'm getting at is, I would encourage you to break up the regular rhythm. I don't want to call it a rut, because I don't believe in such things. I think that there's power in people having expectations that there's a regular rhythm to life in the worshiping community. But at the same time, this is a hard season. I would encourage you to create meaningful ritual, and I would encourage you to use the candle to do that. Some other creative ideas that you may want to pursue. For those of you that do a traditional hanging of the green service, which we don't do here at Tabernacle, but I've served other congregations where it's a really big deal, consider having people scan photographs. of their own childhoods gathered around their own Christmas trees in their living rooms, and have somebody in the church create a compilation of those, and then find some way to weave that in to whatever it is that you're creating to share, where you're making a connection again from the past, nostalgia, to the present moment, wonder. We have to be very careful, in my opinion, I don't want to preach at you, that we don't shift Christmas into the feel-good season, right? Where it's all about nostalgia and all about gift giving. Obviously, you don't need to hear that sermon from me. But I think at the same time, we don't have to throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater. So I think it is very much possible for people to submit things that are very personal to them. And in turn, that gets interwoven in what you're offering. And then again, you try to creatively reframe what God has done in the past, being honest, like don't try to spin it in an unhealthy way, but help people look back and to see God's consistent hand steady all the way through. Now, let me build on that point. I'm trying to kind of let this thing build a little bit. Years ago, I encountered an article that spoke that was like a chapter out of a book called The Secret to Happy Families, or something like that. And the gist of it was, this chapter of the book that was featured in the article was, our children need to hear the stories of our past, and that begins with telling the story of our failures in the past. And because it points to resilience, it points to the fact of, hey kid, look, you're still here, even though that happened all those generations ago. Hey kid, look, that person got a second chance when they blew it. And so the whole point of this article, this chapter in the book, was it's important to tell the hard stories, not just the shiny ones. I would encourage you to consider letting people use this season, this Advent season, as a time of reflecting of what's happened in the past, and not just the good stuff, because this is a season where resilience is desperately needed. I am of the camp that I think that we have a difficult winter ahead. And so I am convinced that there's going to be some serious isolation that's going to return before things get better. And hallelujah, it does appear that things are going to be getting better. And so I'm especially excited about like spring, and if not spring, certainly summer. But the point I'm making though is, let's let people talk about the hard stuff, and let's use it to build, pointing toward resilience in this Advent season that we have ahead. The Advent season is a season that is about preparation for renewal, for the birth of the Christ child, for the one that will lead us. It is the season that we remember what it is that's happened up to this moment, which makes the grace that is about to happen in this moment so much more significant, because we have a better understanding of where we've come from. So I would just really encourage you to lean into the tension, to not be afraid to invite people to talk about the hard stuff. Now, obviously, you need to be careful with how you go about doing that. If it's a public worship setting that's broadcast online, you don't want people using it like group therapy, right? That's not what I mean. It's just more, don't lean into the nostalgia for the sake of feel-good syrupy stuff. Lean into the nostalgia because it points to the consistent presence of God all the way through, and the reminder that God is about to do something new. Now, on that note, do the math. Maybe you've already heard this. I probably heard it from somebody, I don't remember who, so I'm not pretending that I've the first one to make this observation. But that said, it just keeps occurring to me when you do the math. Our congregation went into this mode, the COVID mode, in mid-March. You do the math, that means mid-Advent is right at the 9-month point. It's as if we have been in this pregnant season, and God is about to birth something new. And anything that points to birth means hard stuff. It's exciting, but it's also painful. Like I've never talked to somebody that birthed a baby out of their body that said, wow, that was easy. It's difficult, but what a gift, the gift of life that comes through it. And so I want to encourage you to consider using language in the Advent season that points to something new is about to be born. Church historians are quick to say over and over again, every 500 years, the church is reformed. here we are. And I think that something new is about to be born. And we need to not be afraid in the Advent season to talk about the fact that it's not just easy stuff, it's difficult stuff. I mean, look at the birth narrative of Jesus. It's full of tough stuff. The last thing that I would want to specifically share with you and get kind of to hopefully help get the creative juices flowing a little bit, points to what to do with Christmas Eve, and in our case, Christmas morning. We are not a congregation that traditionally has a Christmas morning service unless Christmas happens to fall on a Sunday morning. But we've decided this year that it's really important that we offer something. Now, traditionally at Tabernacle, the way it looks through the Advent season is we're super deliberate on lighting those Advent candles, and we make a really big deal out of the fact that that white candle is not lit yet. And what we will do, and what I want to encourage you to consider doing, even if you're not a liturgical church or church that does, churchier stuff, is to make that white candle a really big deal, because it is a visual representation of the presence of Christ in our lives. And so for us in years past, for years now, the way it works on Christmas Eve is we gather in the physical sanctuary, which we won't be doing this year. We'll be kind of mishmashing recordings from previous years. And we will have a very deliberate, I don't know what Judy Fisk and Amanda Roan, who are kind of in charge of this, are going to ultimately land on. Maybe we're going to light the candle live and everybody will see it after seeing pre-recorded songs through all the years. I'm not sure yet. But basically, we will go into utter darkness, like it's very intentionally pitch black, and somebody sings a solo of "Oh Holy Night" in total darkness. And at the end of the darkness, what we will do is we will let the silence and darkness linger long enough that it is outright uncomfortable. And in our city context, that means we can actually hear the sounds of the city through the windows because it's just crazy quiet. And inevitably somebody in the past would cough, or, some kid would make a sound and that kind of thing. None of that will be a reality for us this year. But I do envision us having a moment of "Oh Holy Night" in the dark. And I do envision us having a moment where it's a really big deal that we're finally striking the match. I want to encourage you to use a wooden match so that the microphone hears the strike. Anything that we can do to help encourage people's senses to come alive. It doesn't replace them being physically present, but by all means, let's do what we can. So we will light the match, a wooden match. We hear the strike, we light it. And on the other side of that at Tabernacle, what's going to happen is we're going to encourage people to light a candle at home, or assuming that things are safe enough that we feel like we can do this, we're going to have staff out on the sidewalk and some volunteers with a safe mechanism. Think of, for those, we haven't done this, but for those of you that have been doing communion in person, it's kind of, you've got everything set and somebody can come and get their own candle. But basically what will happen is everyone that comes to the church after the service is over will be able to actually light a candle. So we're going to be promoting this in our neighborhood and encouraging people in the neighborhood to watch our live streamed worship service. But if they don't, it doesn't matter. We're just going to invite them. If you would find it meaningful to come and light a candle safely, we'll be standing on the cold sidewalk, making that a possibility. I think in our urban context, we're actually thinking about broadcasting the service on the side of a wall, really big with a projector, just for passersby. But again, all those wheels are in motion. But the point that I'm making is we have separated that ritual for us because of COVID, where we're not going to do in person because it doesn't feel safe. But we do want to provide opportunity for people to have something tangible. So for those of you that have pods of people that are actually physically around each other, you might want to encourage them to watch the service together if you're not going to be in person, and then to actually have a candle. If it's not safe because of where we are in the moment, you would probably want to discourage that. I know we will. But we do envision having an opportunity outside because we think we could safely do it, even if it means the Christ candle in the middle of the sidewalk, and people just walk up to it with a candle they bring themselves and light it. So we're going to do that. And then on Christmas morning, what's going to happen is we haven't figured out what time yet. We're going to do a Zoom Christmas service that is like silly simple. We're going to pre-record children reading the Christmas story, which you all know is kind of a mishmash, I keep using that word, sorry, but it's kind of we've taken different snippets from different synoptic gospels and put them together to make the story that Charlie Brown shares in the Christmas special. So we'll probably pre-record children reading it. We'll share that on Christmas morning through broadcasting it. But then on the other side of it, it would be broadcast in a Zoom. On the other side of it, what will happen is we're going to let people, we're going to mute everybody's microphones. So we'll probably end up, anyway, we're going to mute everybody's microphones. And what we will do is we'll say, use the chat and type what song you want to hear. And we will have our pianist in all likelihood in the sanctuary and a vocalist that will probably be on the other side of the space, depending on where we are with COVID. And we're going to let everybody sing Christmas carols at home. We have found it nearly impossible to gauge whether or not people are singing hymns at home for those of us that are broadcasting our worship services rather than gathering in person. And some of that is just because it's not familiar and it's awkward. But if ever there were a chance for people to sing, it's Christmas carols. And so we're going to go old school Baptist hymn sing night kind of thing, but on Christmas morning, and let people request songs, and we're just going to encourage them to sing them in their living rooms, and everybody will understand. They'll, ideally they actually see the mouths moving on the Zoom screens, but as host, we'll see to it that everybody's microphones are muted except for the people actually in the sanctuary doing this. And we think it's going to be a really sweet gathering time. And again, the Christ candle is lit and present there. And then I would end today by saying that we think, we're biased because this is already something that's part of our regular rhythm, but for those of you that don't have a Christ candle, I think this is the year to have one. I would really encourage you to use that lit white candle week in and week out throughout the Epiphany season ahead and on into Lent. For us, very poignantly, it's powerful, along with many other churches that do churchier stuff. We extinguish the Christ candle on Good Friday, and it is hard and powerful. And then we make it a really big deal on Easter. Friends, we don't know where we're going to be on Good Friday physically. We don't know that we'll be back in our sanctuaries on Easter. I hate to say that. I'm hopeful that we will be, but there's just no way to know it. So if we could create something now at the beginning of Advent that builds up to be used on Christmas Eve, or in some cases Christmas morning if you don't do a Christmas Eve service, and you can keep that symbol, it's going to help be a very tangible thing that gives you all kinds of things that you can do as you keep trudging forward through what I believe will be the back portion of the pandemic. But I'm not a predictor of the future, but I'm a hopeful, optimistic fellow. So I really want to encourage you to take on this tradition if it's not something you've done. And I would just end by saying, if we can be helpful to you, we want to be. I can't promise I can respond to emails because it's a pretty crazy season like you. There's just a whole lot going on. But if you want to forward questions on along to CBF Virginia and they can forward them on to us, maybe we could start something online and share some other ideas. I didn't want to overwhelm you with things. There are 20 other things that we could do, easily, and some not so easily. And I'm guessing you've got some ideas too, but I hope what I've shared with you today is helpful. I hope that, again, that if nothing, it's like, well, I don't know what we're going to do, but it ain't that, whatever. I hope that God uses this, nothing wasted, right? I hope God uses this to offer you some encouragement. I want you to know that we're in this together. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you in your ministries. We are one body with many parts. And I know it sounds trite, but it's so true. We are in this together. And something new is about to be born. And I can think of no better season to celebrate birth than the season of Advent, where we're preparing for the birth of the Christ child and in turn our rebirth. So blessings, friends. You're loved. Hope this has been helpful. Happy Advent to you.